Pokemon Masters, my name is Birdkeeper Toby and thank you for clicking on my video. The Pidgeys and the Beedrills. How does that work? How does Pokemon egg making work? Well, not with a Pidgey and a Beedrill, I can tell you that much, because these Pokemon are in different egg groups. You know, for the longest time, it's always perplexed me a little bit how people think that Pokemon breeding and real world breeding are the same things. Like you leave a male Pokemon and a female Pokemon in the daycare, you get a Pokemon egg. Yeah, this is the most non-PG my channel is gonna be, sorry about that. But the real world mechanics cannot and do not apply here. Take for example Wailord, it's based off of whales. Whales don't lay eggs, nor do cats, which Skitty is, and I'm telling you for a fact, Skitty and Wailord would not breed in the real world, no matter how good the dinner date was. When it comes to the creation of Pokemon eggs, you cannot look to the real world science for an answer to this. Instead, you're gonna have to look in lore, in world, and see what's written out in the text, what's there in the show, in the games that tells us exactly how Pokemon eggs might be made. Plus, if you start applying real world logic, then how do genderless Pokemon breed in the wild? I have seen some explanations that talk about genderless Pokemon working using parthenogenesis, which is where one creature can reproduce with itself, which is pretty cool. But still, given the way egg groups work, I'm inclined to think there's something different going on here. Egg groups, of which there are kind of 13 generic ones and 3 special ones. The 13 generic ones can range from anything from monster Pokemon to bug, water, water 2, water 3. There's lots of different egg groups for different types of Pokemon that should be able to breed with each other, and yeah, as a result you end up with Wailord and Skitty being able to have a Pokemon egg together. As I mentioned before, there are 3 special egg groups, the Ditto egg group, of which the only member is Ditto. Ditto is kind of a special case, and I'm not going to go into Ditto on this video. In fact, I've got a whole other Pokemon theory about how exactly Ditto breeds. It's really interesting, and I do think Ditto is an exception to the rule, hence why it has its own egg group, but I'll leave a link to that video linked at the top of the description. The other 2 are genderless Pokemon, like I said before. They are able to reproduce in the daycare, but only with a Ditto, and the aptly named Undiscovered egg group, which contains mostly legendary or baby Pokemon. And here's something, I just think, look at the name there, Undiscovered. It's not that these Pokemon don't have eggs, it's that their eggs haven't been discovered, or rather, a method of breeding them hasn't been discovered. Because all of this, egg groups, it's all in relation and context to the daycare, where according to the daycare man and daycare lady, they have no idea how your Pokemon egg got there. It's just sort of there. Even though this is their job and you've been shiny hunting and you're like 2,000 eggs into that Cramorant, and why can't I find the shiny Cramorant? Like, it's not like you haven't had the opportunity to see, so why is it always happening when you don't see? Or are you just sparing my young Pokemon trainer self from learning the horrifying truth? Well, let's take a look at some of these undiscovered Pokemon. Specifically, in the animated series, we've seen a baby Lugia, so we know that Pokemon that are legends must start young at some point. They must be born. At least the ones that aren't artificially created by like Team Rocket or Team Plasma. And we have seen legendary Pokemon eggs. This of course is a Manaphy egg. This you can obtain in the game Pokemon Ranger and transfer it to Diamond and Pearl version, and then you can hatch a Manaphy. So Manaphy starts in an egg that is very unique looking to other eggs we've seen. Although, again, in the animated series, all eggs look like the Pokemon that they hatch into, so this might be the intention for all Pokemon eggs, rather than the more generic egg sprite that the game expresses just for every Pokemon, just because they're not going to program in those designs for every Pokemon. Interestingly, Manaphy is another exception, and I talk about it a little bit more in that Ditto video, but Manaphy can breed with Ditto to create an all-new legendary Pokemon. But that, again, that's kind of very much an exception to the rules that are being established. We've also seen the creation of legendary eggs in the Sinjo Ruins event in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where Arceus channels the power of the unknown and the universe as a whole to create an egg for either Dialga, Palkia, or Giratina. This is a big event that requires the coming together of a lot of energy, and likely what Arceus is channeling here is Infinity Energy. While not called Infinity Energy by name back in the days of Generation 4, the Canalive Library does talk about how the universe kind of began with an original one, an original spirit. It is hypothesized that Arceus is what remains of this original spirit, and by the time we get to Generation 6, we learn that Infinity Energy is the life force of all Pokemon. So, original spirit, life force of all Pokemon, and Infinity Energy is used in the production production of Pokeballs. It is the energy that Pokemon use to Mega Evolve, and I believe it's the energy that they use to just regular evolve as well. Pokemon are steeped in this infinity energy. It's kind of a non-sciencey cop-out, but yeah, they're basically magical creatures. And in fact, before the days of Pokeballs, Pokemon were known as magical creatures. That is, according to a source that I couldn't seem to find a verification for anywhere online. I just saw it quoted on Bulbapedia, but I'm sure I've heard it somewhere before. Regardless of whether they are magical creatures or aren't magical creatures, we know that infinity energy is the life force of Pokemon. This is an energy that is able to give life and take a life, and yeah, I mean, give life. That's sort of the key bit you're looking for. What we know about Pokemon eggs is that they're kind of like cradles, and that Pokemon noises can be heard coming from inside the eggs. It's almost as if the Pokemon is already fully formed in the egg, it's just not ready to come out into the world. And when a Pokemon finally does hatch, it's usually depicted as being this burst of white light before it almost like it's evolving, just like when a Pokemon regularly evolves in the TV show. It is sometimes depicted as them hatching, but usually it's this big kind of bright light before they transform and it reveals the Pokemon. So it's very different to real animals, which we know exist in the Pokemon world. Real animals are referenced in Pokedex entries like Raichu's talking about how it can shock an Indian elephant. We've seen them depicted in the card game and the old TV show, so we know for a fact there is a difference between real world animals and Pokemon, and this magical essence seems to be what that difference is. That's certainly the way I've always understood it, and as a side note, it's always made sense to me when in the Pokemon first movie, Mewtwo says, "I've switched off the Pokemon's special abilities." So they're doing battle not in the way Pokemon should battle, where they're firing magical fire breath and water cannons at each other, and they're kind of resisting with their defense and their special defense, which are part of the Pokemon's kind of magical nature. Instead, they're just attacking each other with regular physical attacks. Nurse Joy remarks how Pokemon aren't meant to fight, not like this, and that's because the move bite that a Pokemon might use in battle is different to a physical actual bite. It might look the same, but the Pokemon that are engaging in battle on the battlefield are actually channeling magical powers to make those moves do damage, and that's what the HP is about, and that's how you explain the kind of battle system behind Pokemon. That's a bit of a side tangent, but that's always made sense to me. I don't know, maybe that resonates with some of you. So when it comes to Pokemon laying eggs and hatching, they're not laying eggs. Pokemon breeding is a magical and beautiful process. I mean, it really is, literally. The reason that legendary Pokemon are in that undiscovered egg group is because in order for a legendary Pokemon to reproduce, to channel that amount of energy, it's a big event, and it just maybe can't happen in captivity. As for genderless Pokemon, this theory actually doesn't explain genderless Pokemon. Maybe you can help me out in the comments. Genderless Pokemon must reproduce in the wild, otherwise there wouldn't be any of them, so it must happen something like that. Although, to note, a lot of genderless Pokemon are mechanical Pokemon or rock Pokemon that seem to be natural things or man-made things come to life, so maybe the process of them being birthed is a little bit different. It's infinity energy infecting actual rocks, for example, bringing them to life to create a Geodude. I don't know, that's a sort of half explanation. And of course, the reason that baby Pokemon can't reproduce in captivity is because they're baby Pokemon and they don't have the strength to summon that kind of infinity energy yet. For Pokemon breeding, the reason the daycare couple have no idea how your egg got there isn't because they haven't seen it happen, they just don't understand what they're seeing. Because Pokemon breeding looks like this. Are you ready? I'm gonna show you the real thing. I warned you. That's gross. Yeah, that was a Sonic Adventure 2 reference. Anyway, I am sorry to those of you who I may have disappointed without all the exciting details that you might have been expecting, but yeah, Pokemon breeding, in my mind, has always been that. It's been this kind of magical process of channeling infinity energy to create Pokemon eggs. That makes sense within the lore of Pokemon, as far as I can tell. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Ditto is a very special exception, and I really do encourage you to check out that Pokemon theory because it, as far as I'm concerned, it still holds up. By Pokemon standards, Ditto is pretty freaky, but that's because it can clone other Pokemon. I'll see you in that video. Thank you for watching this one, and of course, so hi Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master.
And a massive thank you to those of you supporting me on Patreon right now, including the big patron of this month, Gunnar Clovis. Thank you, heroes.